Welcome to the Offensively Simple Podcast. I'm your host, Barbie Carr, lead homeopath for Imago Dei Homeopathy. Join me as we demystify homeopathy by unpacking its heart. Real stories from people seeing the depths of what homeopathy was designed to bring. Healing that spans body, soul, and spirit and is truly redemptive. Well, guys, welcome back to the Offensively Simple Podcast. Today you get to listen to just little old me as I share some things with you, kind of more of a teaching probably this time, but about three things that probably seem very, very random to you, but they all have a very common thread. And it's the thread that I really, really want to get across to you guys because I think it's going to be helpful for you in making decisions in these three areas. I get a lot of questions in these specific three areas, and my answers are exactly what I'm going to be sharing with you today. So I thought putting them together would be very helpful. So hopefully you guys can grab a hold of that thread, and it will serve as like a guidepost for you in your decision making, and you can know what to do with each individual topic. So without further ado, the three topics are vaccinations, and how does that pertain to homeopathy? Like, what's the homeopathic perspective on that? Prophylaxis, prophylactic homeopathic treatment versus detoxing versus constitutional. Like, what's the best route to go? So we're going to cover all of that in this. Also, ticks and Lyme disease, such a huge thing right now. There's so much going on out there in the natural and even non-natural world with regards to and this goes right along with the vaccine thing. They're coming out with a new Lyme disease vaccine, so we hear, and ticks are surprisingly or perhaps non-surprisingly on the rise because of it. So we're going to talk about that and how homeopathy applies to those. And then the last one, I lumped these two together simply because of the thread. It's mold toxicity, and parasites. Two other big things, but in the health world and the natural health world. But I have a really big heart for, again, this thread that runs through all of these topics. And so that's why we're talking about them, because it's the thread that causes them to be related. So first of all, let's talk about the vaccination issue. I get asked a lot, do I do homeopathic prophylaxis, which is where basically you would take like small, personalized doses still of a homeopathic remedy made from either those, it depends on which circle of prophylaxis you're in, either that, particular vaccine, that's not really the most common one, or the disease itself, like, I can't even think of one off the top of my head, but it's common even in like puppy breeding or animal breeding, where in the natural realms. But it's a whole. I've known lots of people who have done it for their children in lieu of the actual vaccinations, where you give small doses of the disease, the homeopathic preparation, like the remedy made from that disease, in small portions to build up an immunity. So that's the principle behind the homeopathic prophylaxis. So the body itself can learn that it doesn't need to, come down with these issues. I apologize to every practitioner out there who practices prophylaxis. You can probably tell it's not something in my arsenal, but it doesn't mean that I don't think it has its time and its place. So I do apologize for oversimplifying that entire process, because I do understand there's a lot more that goes behind it, and I want to respect every single one of these areas, especially, not even especially, I want to respect, there's honor, because here's the thing. There is a time and a place for all things. And I'm going to get to the big question you can ask yourself to help you understand which path is best for you. Because, if you're listening to this, you probably have already questioned vaccinations, or you've already completely written them off and think they're, completely not what they appear to be, which I would personally agree is the case, not just personally, but professionally as well. And so you're looking for an answer. You're looking for, well, what do I do? I've already had them, or my kids have already had them. Do I need to go through a detox protocol? I've heard about constitutional homeopathy, but I don't understand it. And is that even going to do anything? Is that preventatively, or on the other side, on the detox side? What do I do, right? Or do I do the homeopathic prophylaxis? Is that even going to count? So I just want to say, I respect that you're listening to this and you have questions and you're ready for answers. And I'm going to give you a question that will serve as that guidepost, and hopefully the thread in this podcast that I'm trying to lay out will help you as well. So just, there is a time and a place for all things. I think there's a validity to the detox protocols. I personally know a local homeopath who's very specialized in this area and has seen incredible results in her own children and in all of her clients. It's a very legitimate form of homeopathy. And so is homeopathic prophylaxis. So again, there's a time and a place for all things. I personally am in the camp of the constitutional homeopathy, and it's because of this thread. I've looked at all of these even before, in my early mama days, and trying to figure out what path do I do. I had my, my mom fingertips or tiptoes in each of these areas and landed on experientially the constitutional side. And then as I grew into my own training and opening my own practice, I hold very strongly personally and professionally to the constitutional option. But again, it's because of my answer to this question that I'm going to propose to you that you need to ask yourself. And it's, what do you want? What are your goals? So kind of, I guess that's two questions, but it's the same question to me. Like, what do you want? And that is the most important question you need to ask yourself in this, because what you want is going to point you to which path is going to be best for you. So if you want to know that your child or your system has been very specifically trained to very specific diseases, then prophylaxis is going to probably be the pathway to you. If that's like you, when you look at all of the options and you ask yourself what you want, and that is the burning thing that you want, then that is probably going to be the path you're going to want to deep dive into and find a practitioner who can help you with that. If what you want is just to detox, like you're really not interested in anything beyond, like we've been down this road and I specifically want to get these specific vaccinations detoxed out of myself or my child's systems, it could be a myriad of reasons within even just that answer, right? Then that detox homeopathic pathway would be profoundly powerful for you, because it is effective if that's what you want. But if what you're wanting is kind of a bigger umbrella than something that specific. So I would say the detox pathway and the prophylaxis pathway in regards to the vaccination issue in question, if you're after something very, very specific, whichever one of those answers your question is going to be the path. But if what you want, when you sit with that question, what are my goals? What am I after? What do I want? If you sit with that question and you're really after something much bigger than just a specific, I want to prevent, specific diseases, or I want to just detox the things I've already experienced. If your answer to what do you want is much bigger than that, then you need to consider constitutional treatment. If you're sitting with that question, you're going, I don't just want to, yes, I want to detox. Yes, I want to prevent. So maybe you have a yes to both of those areas, but you're like, I want so much more than that. I want to get to the deepest root of these issues. I want to prevent. I want to be so adaptable that it doesn't matter what the specific disease is. My body's going to know what to do to fight back. If you're the type of person who I'm raising my hand, that's my camp, or like, I'm after the generational roots. Like, I don't just want the root that I created, in my lifetime or my child's lifetime. I want to pluck it up as far back as I can go. Then you are really wanting to look at the constitutional side. So again, I cannot, if you're in this for this podcast, for this specific chunk of the conversation, and you've already like, oh man, I wanted to know about prophylaxis or detox, you're going to have to find another place to get the details on that, because like I said, my heartbeat is the constitutional side, and I'm going to tell you why. But mad respect for both of those areas. They're very, very specialized and very detailed, and the people who go into it and do it well see tremendous results. But if you are like me and you are wanting that bigger umbrella answer to the question, you're wanting that deep generational, let's get to the guts of the guts of the guts and become as adaptable as we can be, so it doesn't matter what the specific disease is. I have the confidence in knowing my body's going to be able to deal with it. That really goes back to that design. Why I have my practice called Imago Dei Homeopathy. It's about, have a design. We were literally designed to adapt to whatever comes our way. We were literally designed to heal and overcome. And that concept is even a part of this thread that I'm presenting. But if that's you, constitutional treatment is 100% what you're looking for, because that's exactly what it does. So personally, when I was researching all of these different ways and had just started tiptoeing into homeopathy as a young mom and trying to resolve, I knew vaccines were not an option. Absolutely not. And I had done enough research, and I had seen enough firsthand proof, and just all of the things, not getting into that discussion, but it just sort of that I was going to die on. That was a hard no. But what am I going to do, right? So, and we had just started tiptoeing into it as homeopathy as a family. And so when I started to realize and learn, even at the very bare minimum mom level, like there's some depth to this constitutional treatment that I'm after, that resonates with me. It wasn't enough for me to just be protected from specific diseases, because I knew like there could be more. What about those, right? I don't want to have to constantly keep paying. It felt to me that the prophylaxis route was going to keep me constantly having to play catch up. And I wanted rest and peace. I wanted confidence. I didn't want fear and spinning, right? And so, or constant wondering, like, what's next? What do I have to do? And then the detox, I was the one who needed the detox seriously, because 34 years of medical suppression and tons and tons of vaccines. I knew I was also after that, but I wanted more than that. I didn't want to just detox. I wanted my body to resonate with that design, that it was made to adapt, that it was made to overcome. And I knew I had deep generational roots that I needed to uproot and have resolved. So I was very, very drawn to the constitutional when I realized I think what I'm looking for is hidden in this. And so here's how, now I'm getting to the thread. So I've answered the question personally. I'm after that bigger umbrella of what I want. I want it all, right? And if that's you, that route is constitutional, because here's the thread that runs through all of these: is constitutional treatment the deepest root. So below the cellular level, right? Below all of that, you're getting to that energetic pattern that is literally generational. And this is scriptural, you guys. Like, go back to Deuteronomy, where it talks about the sins of the fathers are going to be revisited, but the blessings of the fathers can also be passed on, right? There's whole sections of scripture about that. How is that possible, right? And science is even talking about this now, where you get the epigenetics, where like there's a physical molding and shaping of the body. There are physical responses that get formed and landscaped by the choices that we make. So that again goes back to those scriptural roots. So these generational susceptibilities, and that's the thread with all of this. When and those susceptibilities are they're rooted in grief that has never been dealt with, and just keeps getting passed on until it creates these physical inroads in a person. You've got trauma. I've talked about that in a previous podcast, where you have these let's say they're like UTIs or, reproductive and kidney issues that kind of run in a family. And if you go, and then there's these behaviors that pop up, quote unquote phases that pop up at certain young ages, you could probably trace that back to somewhere in the past where there was sexual assault at a very young age, a trauma that had never been dealt with. And it create that energetic pattern of that trauma created it landscaped the physicality of that family line. And so those are just two examples, but grief and trauma and suppression, which I'm defining suppression as anytime we take something or do something to our bodies that our bodies should be doing on their own. So if we have a headache and we take a painkiller for that headache, it's forcing our bodies to stop sending pain responses. It's not doing anything to resolve the reason for the headache, but the body should be figuring out it should be identifying the issue with the headache, and it should be resolving the headache, which then would relieve the pain. But when we continually take painkillers for the headache, then we are actually weakening the body's ability to identify what's wrong and fix it itself. So that is the definition of a suppression. Or like you have heartburn and you take antacids. It's not resolving the heartburn. It's just forcing your acid producers to stop making so much acid, but it's crippling your body's ability to identify why you're having heartburn and to correct it itself. And so that is a suppression where you're taking something that your body should be doing itself. But then there's also, if you're removing something, guys, keep your organs. Keep your organs. Keep your appendixes. Now, I know that there can be very severe, like emergent life-threatening situations, but honestly, they take them out before they get to that point, and it is 100% treatable homeopathically. This is, if you get to an emergent life-threatening situation, then of course you need to take appropriate emergent action, but there are so many signs leading up to it that are 100% treatable, so your body homeopathically, so your body can reverse that process, stop the emergent issue, and you can keep your appendix. I'm going to actually have somebody on this podcast here soon that will share that story with you. She still has her appendix. Her father does not, but she does, because it was able to get caught soon enough and it was completely treated. And so keep your gallbladders, do what you can to keep your organs, because the moment you remove something, that is the greatest levels of suppression. And this goes into the cancer conversation, because when you take out a tumor or you cut off a thing on your skin or whatever, you are literally crippling your body's ability to identify that it shouldn't have allowed that growth in the first place, let alone resolve it. Okay. And so I know that we've been conditioned in the allopathic world, kill it, kill it, kill it, kill it. But that the root of the cancer, well, we were talking about the really deep susceptibilities, but let's not say the root, the behavior or tendency or personality perhaps of cancer is it crosses boundaries. The whole idea of it is that, like, right now your body is creating cancer cells, and in a healthy body, the other cells are saying, whoa, no, you can't be here. When your body seeks it out, kills it, and destroys it, that strengthens your body, right? When your body is functioning like it's supposed to be, and it's identifying there's a boundary line here and you cannot continue to develop, and your body destroys those cells and sloughs them off on their own, that's beautiful. That's what we want. But when there are too many of those deeper grief, trauma, patterns of both behavior and inroads in the body, that you have these susceptibilities where those cancer cells then are allowed, the body isn't standing up for itself, basically. The body isn't standing and keeping its boundary lines, and it's allowing those cancer cells to grow out of control. That's where cancer becomes life-threatening. And so if you think about that behavior and that pattern of cancer, of how it's even able to form to a dangerous degree, and then you go and you cut the thing out, you are crippling your body's ability to identify, we should never have allowed this to happen. And we're the ones that need, the cells are the ones that need to take it out. But but constitutional homeopathic treatment and acute homeopathic treatment in the classical model, if you go after it in the really targeted Similum way, which is finding that super personalized targeted remedy, you can actually undo those suppressions and clear out those generational griefs and those generational energetic traumas so that the body can wake up. It's like the supercomputer in the body gets woken up and it can go, whoa, we never should have allowed all of these things to happen. And they start taking care of it itself. I've seen it. I have clients go back to some of my other podcasts. They've experienced it. And so that's what I'm talking about. The power of constitutional treatment is it's going after that susceptibility. One of the leading homeopaths of the past was Kent, and he is quoted as saying a lot of things, but this one I love, where he says, there would be no measles if there were no children susceptible to measles. All right. So you can get into like germ theory versus terrain theory. Obviously, this is more of a terrain, but this has been effective long before the germ theory came on the scene. Homeopathy has been working before there was an alternative to it. And so if you're asking yourself this question in the vaccination world, I know I don't want to do vaccines. And when I ask myself, what do I want? What am I after? What are my goals? If you're in the camp of like, I want it all, I want to get at the deepest root possible and correct it, not just for me, but for my kids. I want to get all of the stuff detoxed out of my system. And I want to be as adaptable to whatever can come. I want me and my kids to be as strong as we possibly can. Then you absolutely are after that constitutional treatment where it wakes up that supercomputer, it fine tunes it. So it's going back to like that design that you were given, that no matter what comes, it can respond accordingly, it can communicate accordingly, and you can find the appropriate remedy, homeopathic remedy, and resolve the issue. And so and here's where I'm talking about the detox. So if we're talking about the deepest levels of what create that susceptibility, right? The grief, the trauma, and then the suppressions. So this happened to me personally, and then I had a client share this same story, the same exact experience. She was actually training to become a homeopath, and had a vast experience with acute and even some more practical techniques with homeopathy, but was training to in the classical model for homeopathy, but hadn't experienced the LMs until she became one of my clients, the LM potencies, there's a potency designed specifically for constitutional chronic level treatment. And so here's what happened. So and again, I'll tell you, I had the same experience. So when she described it to me, I was like, I know what happened. So she was saying that shortly after she had started her, actually she was a couple months into her LM potency on her constitutional treatment, tons and tons of amazing results. But then in this follow-up, she was explaining how shortly she had gone up in potency, and when she had gone up to the next level of potency, she started to experience this weird ache in her left arm, and she, trying to move it like right at the very top of her shoulder, and she's just like, ugh, in that muscle, and she's like trying to stretch it, but it was familiar, she couldn't quite put her finger on it, and it just was so sore, and she's trying to stretch it, and she finally realized there were a handful of other symptoms going on in her body at the time that were reminders of a certain time in her life. So there was a return of an old symptom, which again, that's part of the healing process in constitutional treatment, when your body's strong enough to bring up something that had been suppressed, whether it was emotional or physical, it will bring up an echo version of it, right? Just enough to get your attention and go like, oh, I've experienced this before, but it's not as intense as before, usually. And then when she realized that time frame with the other symptoms that were kind of coming up and resolving, and her body was working on them, she had gone on an international trip and had gotten a series of vaccinations back then. And she realized the soreness in her arm was the feeling she had after having those vaccinations. And within a few days, the soreness was gone, and the other symptoms started to resolve, and she had a huge acceleration in her vitality and her health. And I told her, I said, I had the same experience when I had reached a certain level, and my own remedy, I had the same ache, and it was so familiar, and I'd had so many vaccines. Who knows which one it was for me? I've actually had it a couple of times in my healing journey, and so I knew my body was detoxing, because every time I had one of those, and I cleared it and resolved it, there was a boost in my health and a boost in my vitality. And I knew my body was doing what it was supposed to do, which was completely detoxing the vaccines even, and whatever all it was affecting deeply inside of me during that time. And so I just wanted to toss that in there, that your body knows how to detox. It's part of the design. And when you give it the support it needs at that deep constitutional level, it will do it. When you undo the susceptibilities and the suppressions, then the body starts functioning like it was designed to, which is to detox and to adapt and to overcome the things that comes its way. So that's the vaccination conversation that I just wanted to touch on. Obviously, it's so much bigger than this, but that's how I wanted to introduce this thread of susceptibility. So the next big one is ticks and Lyme disease, right? Like we said, there's a new, supposedly a new Lyme vaccine coming out, which I do not recommend as a homeopathic practitioner. But also at the same time, there's reports of potential increase in ticks. And of course, the media is starting to share more and more stories of, hey guys, guess what? Like, there's always been Lyme is a tick-borne disease in part, and there's just because the media is just now covering the story more doesn't mean it's necessarily happening more often. It's just being so interestingly positioned in front of our attention, right? Like, to perhaps stir some fear up and sell some vaccine products possibly. But I just want to say this, that we don't have to be afraid of these things. Again, the best prevention for Lyme and anything else that tick might carry would be constitutional treatment, because you're fine-tuning that supercomputer. You're undoing the susceptibilities. Like, you might not even know if you have a susceptibility to a tick bite becoming an issue like Lyme disease, but if you're doing constitutional treatment and that's in there, your body's going to take care of that for you. So again, susceptibility is the only reason. It's not the tick that's going to give it to you. If a tick bite's going to develop into that for you, it's because you were susceptible generationally to that. And again, constitutional treatment is going to undo that susceptibility so that you can not be subject to that, right? But let's say you maybe are already in the Lyme camp. You guys, Lyme disease is 100% treatable with constitutional treatment, with homeopathic treatment. Sometimes there are, depending on the stage of it, there are layers to that. So it could require a mixture of acute treatment and with that deep, deep, powerful foundation of the constitutional treatment, it really can be completely overcome. And again, with it, not just overcoming it, but the susceptibility to it. And so what's beautiful about that is, if you go through that process before you have children, you're not going to pass that susceptibility onto your children. So unfortunately for the Lyme vaccine makers, they don't want to hear this. They don't want you to hear this. But again, the root of it is susceptibility, and constitutional treatment is going to undo that. So again, you have to ask yourself, what do you want? Do you want to be tapped into that adaptability, right? And so that you don't have, I mean, obviously nobody wants tick bites for all of the reasons, and there are preventative measures that can be taken and absolutely should be taken. I'm not saying to be foolish. I'm saying couple your wisdom with the knowledge, right? Couple the wise actions that you're taking on preventative measures with the knowledge that your preventative measures could be so much deeper. And when you add constitutional treatment to that preventative measure, you get a deeper rooted peace and confidence, in addition to the other things that you're doing, so that you can live without fear. Because fear is another way that really truly gets in there and creates weaknesses and susceptibilities in us. And so if we can take steps to increase our body's adaptability to overcome and to heal, then constitutional treatment is definitely something that it does all of those things, and it's going to help deepen that level of confidence. So I just, again, wanted to bring that up. I will say this homeopathically, that Ledum, the homeopathic remedy Ledum, is very commonly suggested for after a tick bite. And while I will say yes, it might be a very good one if you live in a place where there's a high level of ticks just normally, or you're concerned about it because of what's going on, go grab Ledum 30C and carry it with you. The reason, so I'm a old school classical homeopath. The presentation, one of not the only one of the main presentations for Ledum, is that the wound site or the bite site, feels cold to the touch. So you always want to check with that, and you want to see if it's fitting the picture. So it's not every single bite or every single puncture wound is going to want that, but the nature of a deep puncture wound is that it might tend to feel colder rather than like a spider bite that might flare up and feel hot and puffy, right? So Ledum, the causative factor in Ledum, kind of like arnica, the causative factor of arnica is blunt force trauma. So like you have a blunt force injury, you don't really have to sit there and take a case. You just take the arnica because that is such a strong causative indicator for arnica, right? Well, Ledum has a causative factor for puncture wounds, and a tick is very much similar to a puncture type wound, right? It's puncturing your skin. And so that's why Ledum is, a good thing. It can be a nice preventative thing to take, particularly if it feels cold to the touch. But even if it doesn't, it's not going to be harmful to take it if you discover that you or your child have a tick bite on it, because it is, again, like a puncture wound. So I wanted to say that as well. But then the last thing, if we're carrying this thread of susceptibility through to the last area, which would be mold and parasites, there's an additional thing I wanted to say to these things. I was speaking with a client just about this just yesterday, and it was on my heart. So this is why I'm going to close with it. But mold is an awful evil thing. I personally have a strong sensitivity to mold, and am able to sniff it out like months and months before it finally shows itself. Like, I should probably monetize my nose, but I don't want to go exposing myself and sniffing out mold. But I really have an uncanny, weird track record for sniffing it out. And I think it's because of how sensitive I am. Now, yes, it can be very dangerous. It's not good for your health. And if you're looking at your health allopathically, which is system by system and, symptom by symptom, then you're going to be very scared when you dive into the mold thing. And the same with the parasites. Parasites are real, and they can wreak havoc on your health. And they are no fun. But again, if you're looking at it allopathically, symptom by symptom and system by system, you're going to get pretty freaked out by them. That being said, let's go back. Like, they aren't root causes. They really aren't. The root cause of parasites being an issue is that you have a susceptibility to that is very generational, to your body being able to take on parasites. That includes head lice, you guys. Like, head lice is a parasite, and so it's possible to not get it. And here's a story. I went to an orphanage in Guatemala twice in college, one time for 2 weeks and the second time for 1 week. And all of these children had, like, it wasn't like some of them were true orphans. They didn't have any parents. Others were, it was more of like, they could visit if it was a safe enough environment. They could visit and go home to their parents on the weekends. But, they lived in this home, which was a beautiful, beautiful, healthy place. There was school there and everything. Because, the family wasn't able to support them and they had a better life here, but there was still family connections there, right? So they did lice treatments, again, which is the suppressive allopathic way of treating it, but common, and you've got hundreds of kids, that's what they did. And so they treated them regularly, but the kids that would go home, they'd get it again and they'd bring it back. And so some of them were so bad, they'd lift up and they had, beautiful jet black hair, and they lift up their hair in the back by their neck, and it just would be bright white with lice, right? So I had waist length hair in, not I had waist length hair in college, and they loved to play with my hair. And I prayed and I prayed and I prayed I would not get lice. I'd never had it in my whole life, and I just really didn't want it, And so I, but these kids they loved looking at all the colors in my hair. And so I just trusted the Lord, and while I was there, but then it's like the day I got back both times, I had somebody do a lice treatment on me and comb it out. And again, which is suppressive, I just wanted to make sure, but they went through it super thoroughly, and both times, you guys, there was zero evidence of any lice. And it was a miracle by far. But now, as you fast forward to now, as I'm a practitioner, I understand I wasn't susceptible. I didn't have the susceptibility to lice becoming an issue. Fleas on your dogs, like that is a susceptibility. You treat them constitutionally and they won't get fleas. um, so parasite, and then you have the gut parasites, all the different ones, right? Now, if the problem is, if it's so easily suppressed, if you are doing, you should not have to do constant parasite cleanses. You really shouldn't. And when you do that, you are actually making yourself more susceptible to the parasites you're trying to get rid of and other ones, because you are doing something for your body. Your body should be doing itself. Your body should be identifying that there are parasites in there, and your body should be killing them off and sloughing them off. And I have multiple clients who have experienced this. They had no awareness that they had parasites. And I had one client in particular, she was severely actually vaccine injured. And finally, I mean, a lifetime of torment and suppression trying to fix the issue, finally got her on the right homeopathic remedy, and everything was clearing up, and she was having such better health in all the ways. Well, she goes up in potency on the same remedy, still doing very well, continuing to see improvement, and she starts passing parasites regularly. And she's like, I don't even know I had these. And I said, just keep taking your remedy. This is enormous. This is huge. And she continued to improve. And so that happens a lot. People are like, "So, do I have a parasite issue?" I'm like, if you aren't and they've been doing constitutional treatment for a while, right? And I know their case and I know what's going on. I'm like, if you're not seeing them, you probably don't. Or your body's not ready. It's needing to do other things first. It's actually not the issue your body's needing to work on. So just hang tight. Now, parasites, if you have a really bad infestation and there is visible, like, I have parasites, like, you treat that acutely, and there are remedies that will target that, homeopathic remedies. Like, I had a client who had a couple of stray cats living in there. She lives overseas, and they had a couple of stray cats that were living in their yard, and one of them had a very clear parasite issue. Like, they were visible in the anus, and hard, round, very don't touch me tummy, and just insatiable hunger. And she thankfully had a homeopathic kit. I said, get the remedy Cena and give it to her, and cleared it right up. She healed that cat with Cena. And so there are others. If there is an active, like, gut parasite issue, you can treat that homeopathically, and I so recommend that, because again, when you do that, you are still undoing the susceptibility. You're waking up your body, because the homeopathic remedy is not killing the parasites. The homeopathic remedy, when it's well matched, is just waking up the body's system to say, hey, we've got a problem here. And then the person's body is identifying the parasites, and that person's body is sloughing them off. And so you're actually not only taking care of the active issue at hand, you're also undoing the susceptibility. So you're doing a double whammy of dealing with the issue and preventing it. So same thing with mold. Like, if you are super sensitive to it, and even if there's an active issue going on, obviously you need to deal with and remediate where you can't just, yes, you can start and should start homeopathy at any point in the process to undo that susceptibility to mold being a problem. But you have to remediate the mold. You have to get the mold out. You have to stop the source of its growing and clean it out or move or whatever it is you have to do, because it's like putting logs on a fire, right? You got to stop feeding the fire so you can put the fire out. But here's my point. So yes, just like I kind of outlined everything with the parasites, mold is 100, even mold toxicity, all of that. You want to empower the body to rid your own body of the mold. Now, there's herbal supports you can absolutely take to help your organs. Herbs can be suppressive depending on their use, but I utilize them a lot for nutritional support or even specific organ support. Like after 34 years of medical suppression, my liver needs a little extra help. But my foundations are the constitutional treatment, right? And so I do have herbs I even recommend to some of my clients if I can tell like you're going to really benefit from a little extra support here, and it just to accelerate what the remedy is doing, right? But here's what I wanted to say. So we've gotten the thread of susceptibility through all of these, but I wanted to close with the mold and the parasites, because my biggest heart in my practice is let's slay the giant of fear and grab a hold of the hope that is so real and so available to you, so that you can silence the voices that are trying to feed you fear. I tell you, I don't care how even Christian an influencer says that they are, because I've come across some that are like, I have ones that I absolutely adore and love, and we practice totally differently, right, as far as health practitioners go, but they're right on in their heart, right? They're giving hope, right? So this is my point. But then there are others that might be really, really skilled and might be really, really like have a gajillion followers, but they're feeding you fear. So this is what I'm going to tell you, is that fruit doesn't lie. And I'm not like, fear shouldn't, don't eat the fruit of fear. And if somebody's trying to hand you the fruit of fear, run for your life. Literally. Don't take fear as an answer. But if somebody is offering you hope, and that hope is it's actually that offering you the fruit of hope, and what they're offering you is actually sparking hope in you. It's starting to grow hope in you. It's silencing the voice of fear, and it's propelling you forward into like, I might have a future and I might have a hope. Then that's good fruit. Follow that fruit, right? But what I will say is that, and they might even treat things differently than how I've said, and that's fine. Again, you go back to that question, what do you want? What do you want? What is your goal? And homeopathy is a highly personalized medicine. And that's what I love about it. But because we're human beings. None of us are made. We're each unique. We're like those snowflakes, right? Every single one of them is designed uniquely. Every single one of us is designed uniquely. There's no cookie cutter for health. Like, I firmly believe homeopathy is for every living thing, plant, animal, human being. But even within that, it's personalized and it's unique, and you got to honor what you want and the life journey that you're on and what the path the Lord has you on. So if you're listening to this, homeopathy's crossing your path, right? And you're taking a look at it, but it doesn't cross everybody's path, and it doesn't mean you can't find hope, right? I'm just saying, follow the fruit of hope. And there's so much in the mold and parasites world where they convince you that mold is stronger and bigger, and these tiny little parasites are stronger and bigger than you are, than you were designed, than your design. There's the way that they present the fear and the way that they describe it makes you believe that you're doomed by these itty bitty little things. And like, we have to flip that narrative on its head. You have to understand, you were designed to heal. You were designed to adapt. You were designed to overcome. You were designed to be able to stand in the face of mold and parasites and be like, not on my watch. My body is going to end you. And you do whatever it takes to do that, right? And my kids are not going to inherit this. And I'm going after this because I know who made me. I know maybe you don't know the Lord who made you, and that's okay, but you can get to know him as you become more familiar with your own design, because you are a work of art. You are a masterpiece. And you might go to an art museum and you might not have any clue who painted this incredible thing in front of you, but if you're drawn to a specific work of art, you're then going to be drawn to figure out who made this. Who created this? Who painted this? Who was the one that this beautiful work of art came out of, right? So the art will draw you to find out who did it. And that is my point here. Do not let anybody convince you that you are less than that you are weaker than mold, that you are weaker than parasites, that you are weaker than ticks. You are not. You are a work of art. You are a masterpiece. You were designed in such an intricate and unique. There's nobody else on this earth like you. Not a single person who carries your thoughts and your makeup and your personality and your design. And this is why I'm so passionate about homeopathy, because it personalizes itself to you and polishes off that beautiful design. So not as you become personally more in tune with who you were actually designed to be and how you were actually designed to function, it will draw you to find out, who is this one that designed me like this? Wow, who is it that made me? And if you already know the answer to that question, then you can begin, as you heal, as you begin to shine, as you begin to thrive. People are going to be like, what are you doing? Why are you feeling so good? Why are you so happy? You look amazing. What are you doing differently? They're going to be drawn to the light and the art that is you, and that will ultimately draw them to their maker and designer as well. So I just wanted to end this, that yes, we all have susceptibilities, we all have suppressions, we all have journeys that have brought us to where we are now, but God gave us this beautiful gift of constitutional homeopathy that can equip us and arm us to adapt, to heal, to overcome, and we are not even we do not have to be victims even of our susceptibilities. God has truly given us everything we need for life and godliness. And I am passionate about constitutional homeopathy because I can see its power, not just even constitutional, I would say classical homeopathy, because of its power to personalize and its power to undo at the deepest generational levels. It just, I just can't even tell you. So let me leave you with this. When you're facing any one of these topics that I mentioned here today, or any other question, you need to sit down and get really honest with yourself and say, what do I want? Don't settle for just what you think you should want. Find out what your guts, what your heart really truly wants, and then find the answer. It's out there. It is out there. Find the answer for what you want on the deepest, deepest heart level place. And then pursue that. Pursue that. Go after it and don't settle for anything less. All right, guys. If you are interested in constitutional homeopathy, check out my website. It is imagodeihomeopathy.com. IMAGODEI homeopathy.com. You can schedule a free discovery call there. It's legitimately free. And you can just get on the phone and talk with me and ask your questions and about homeopathy, about me, about your own journey and how this might look and what it might look, how it could work. I also have tons of other resources on there. I have an e-course that equips you. I like to call it a homeopath in my back pocket, like in your back pocket, excuse me, so that, for those, I designed it especially for mothers so that you could know what to do when this tummy bug hits at 8 p.m. on Friday. And you can arm yourself, if you do end up having that active, very visible active parasite issue, you can find the remedy for your child or person in your family that needs it. So there's access to an e-course on there. There's tons of just information you can learn, resources you can geek out on. Um, and I would encourage you to go check out my website, see if there's anything there that could either point you towards the answer to the question of what you want, or maybe you'd even find the answer to what you're wanting. So, God bless you all. Thank you for listening, and stay tuned for next time.